the couple things that I'm very clear about is technology is like water. It always finds a leveling and streamlining. So the interesting parts about this moment in time is, one, I don't think there's gatekeeping like there are with other technical advances, right? Where like you don't need to be a coder. You can just vibe code now, which to me is fascinating as a non-technical founder who's scaled tech companies. That's really, for a non-technical person, that's a super exciting moment. I don't think at scale people have comprehend what that's going to usher in. And to me, that's exciting. That's like the economic impact where anyone can come up with a concept, test, deploy, tweak. That used to take 6-12 months with capital versus like now you can do it in hours with no money, right? So I think it's going to usher in a ton of innovation. I'm very clear that we're about to commoditize all forms of digital communication. So posts, video, voice, it's only going to get better and better and better. And so everyone's going to be able to create beautiful content of themselves sounding really intelligent. And what that'll happen, because again, I can predict this based on directional accuracy, is that we're just going to become numb to it.
This is everything they never told you about real estate with the AI queen, Carrie Soave, sharing the tech, tools, and lead gen strategies that top producers won't tell you about. Now, here's your host, Carrie.
Welcome back, everybody. I am here with EXP's CEO, Leo Pareja. Thank you so much for coming on, Leo. I know you are super busy, so I really, really appreciate it, as do all of my listeners.
No, I appreciate you having me on.
Okay, so I wanted to approach this podcast because I feel like it's a good opportunity for the listeners to get to know Leo, and a really good opportunity for me to get to know Leo too, because I see you everywhere at every single event, but I feel like I don't know enough about you. So I'm gonna think that a lot of agents maybe feel the same way. So let's get right into Leo today. I discovered doing some deep research on you. Well, obviously my AI did the deep research. Some very, very cool things about Leo. So let's start at the beginning, because you started doing real estate at a very young age, correct?
Mm-hmm. I did.
Okay. And you broke a lot of records, right?
I did. It was my obsession very early on in my life.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I feel like that's a common theme. I feel like anybody who is successful just has this inner competition with themselves ongoing that kind of like never ends.
That's very fair.
You went into lending as well, and even into tech.
That is correct.
Yeah. And you now have a foundation. And that was one thing that I really wanted to touch on today, because I didn't know about this. So tell me a little about, you and your wife have this foundation for creating financial literacy. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you a little bit backstory. My wife and I have been together since we were, she likes to tell everybody, since we were kids. We met when she was 21 and I was 24. And when we met, it was like our third date. We realized that we had both applied to be big brothers, big sisters. And funny enough, we both got rejected because we had too many tickets. So we both realized we probably weren't the best drivers, as well as we both wanted to give. And after that date, we actually walked into their office together and demanded children. And they both gave us a little brother and a little sister to sponsor. But my journey with giving, both my parents come from the nonprofit world and have always demonstrated giving to me growing up. So I was super clear. I wanted to give. And by the time the kind of the boom and the bust in the financial crisis, I had always told myself, I'm gonna give when, right? This kind of aspirational someday maybe. And then I lost it all. And then I realized, the concept of tomorrow doesn't exist is very real. It's not kind of just like an esoteric sentence. Like time only exists in the now. And one thing that the financial crisis taught me is you don't need money to give. There's so many ways to contribute to others. And I think one of the most powerful ways is through time. And that's what kind of put Ariana and I on our giving journey. And so we both got I got a little brother and she got a little sister. And it was the first real example that we saw that to give, all you need to find is one person who's willing or wanting guidance. And I know that fundamentally we both affected the trajectory of those kids' lives. And so we always gave. So we gave early on in the team, where we would volunteer the real estate team to go and paint houses for an organization that was very near and dear to our hearts that took homeless families to self-sufficiency. I think a lot of people give because they feel they should, or it's the nice thing to do, right? And they pick a charity and they show up once a year during Christmas to a soup kitchen. But there's so many ways to create impact. And I prescribe to the philosophy of like change one person's life by concentrated giving versus kind of generically checking a box. And so as we've acquired more wealth, we've always said, hey, we're going to always continue to give. And so we set up a foundation that allows us to contribute to specific things. So we work very closely with a organization back home where we grew up in DC, where we would sponsor folks to go through a upskilling boot camp in tech, not going through college. And we have, super amazing examples of folks making $45,000 a year, 6-month boot camp, making $80,000, $90,000, $120,000 a year.
So good.
And then when we moved to Miami, it's very important for us to be integrated into the community that we're in. So we went and partnered with Miami-Dade College and rolled out a financial literacy course that's available to anybody. The way we came up with that concept was when we had our tech company, we had a brown bag lunch, once a month, I think. It was like, ask the CEO anything. We had a bunch of 20-some-year-olds who wanted to come spend time with me and pick my brain. And the number one thing they asked for, Carrie, was an adulting class. Adulting 101 is what they requested from me. And I wasn't even sure what that was. And what it was is I had 20-some-year-old, CS graduates making 180 grand a year. And they just didn't know how to open a credit card. They didn't know how to set up a 401k. So that Ask Leo Anything Adulting 101 turned into what our family foundation does on a regular basis with Miami-Dade College.
I love that. I think there's such a significant need for that. I know that Nadia here in Canada, so I'm Canadian. So Nadia, our leader here in Canada, she's put together a financial literacy program, because I think especially in our industry, there's a lot of agents making a lot of money, but nobody has anything to show for it. And I think it's kind of an epidemic. If I can be really honest, I'm learning financial literacy as I go. I don't have a business background. I'm just learning everything, and it's taking me a little bit longer to figure everything out. But actually one day, Leo, I'm gonna contact your wife, because you guys started a foundation, and that is my dream. So I'm about animal rescue. And I got stuck in the same trap of, when I get more, I'll give more. So I started, donating my time and my social media presence, raising awareness. But that's something that's on my bucket list, something I want to do. But again, it's something I wouldn't even know where to start. So I think that's what's so great about this company, EXP, is that it gives you proximity and direct contact to people all over the world that have done so many different things. Sometimes it's not about real estate, right? And to have that support and that open line of communication and that collaboration, not just around getting leads. One of the things you talk about a lot is EXP enables everybody to create the kind of business that they want. That looks different for everybody. And I am literally the perfect example of that. I came into EXP, I was with Remax, paying thousands, over $1,000 a month, the desk fees and the whole bit. I came to EXP not to save money. Not for any of those reasons, not for the trainings. I came to EXP to get close to people that I never would have had access before, so that I could learn how to build a company outside of real estate. And that's exactly what EXP did for me. So you're so right. Like, I couldn't say this enough, let us help you build the kind of business you want, no matter what that looks like, whether it's production, attraction, like some kind of support business, like anything. So I find real value in that. So tell your wife I'm going to be in contact with her, because that's one of my dreams.
Well, it goes back to the only thing that matters is time, right? I value time above everything. And I think everyone needs to make decisions on a daily basis on how they spend it. So I say this a lot from stages, and this is an example of it. So I would say that 50 to 70% of my days are one-to-one to one-to-many with agents. And it's a combination of like what we're doing here today. Right now, you and I are one-to-one, giving you my time. But this also becomes one-to-many, because then you can share it with others. But this morning, I woke up and did my regular workout, and one of our top agents in Miami joined me, and we worked out together, and he and I had breakfast before we did this, right? So I got one-to-one, and obviously it's, special because he lives in my neighborhood, right? I can't do that with everybody just because of proximity. We're in 27 countries. But then, I'll do a bunch of corporate stuff, right? Like earnings call prep and meetings. And then I probably I'll do 2 more podcasts today, and I'm interviewing folks, right? So I'll be doing one with John Lee that you just saw in International, and this gentleman named Jason Osborne, who single largest franchisee at KW's got like 4,000 agents, right? And this creates rapport between us as agents. People get to know you. And then with the one-to-many, then you can share your message across the board, right? So it doesn't matter what country I'm in or what week it is. I think my job and my role is to spend as much time as I can with agents, right?
Yeah.
I think is a very different way of viewing the world. And maybe it's because I'm an agent at heart and production and mentally and how I operate. So like, as I spent time this morning with that one team leader, he was kind of debating whether he goes and spends some time building an international rev share group. And I very candidly, I'm like, hey, you just need to hold every minute accountable, right? Like, he's one of the largest flex teams in South Florida. Is it more productive to go start another flex team in a different part of the country that he could spin up? Like, what's the return on investment on the time? Of course, I want him to go build out rev shares all over the planet. But at the same time, it's like, what season of life are you in? How much are you willing to travel? His kids are still pretty young. I don't think he wants to be gone a lot. So you opened it with it. There is no right or wrong. It's what's right for you in this season of life, and the outcomes that you want. I used to have an aversion to the term small business or lifestyle business. Like I can admit to myself that it used to be like, it didn't sound big enough. And then I did the startup and raised a bunch of money and scaled and realized that is not fun at all. And the lifestyle business is actually the dream, right? Because a lifestyle business is a business that you build to fund the lifestyle you want. Right. And you have a very good example of one. By the way, you reserve the right to change your mind. You reserve the right to want to go bigger, go smaller, change it, adjust it for whatever your new goals are. And so I think that's the beauty of entrepreneurship and kind of the whole journey of life.
Yeah. And this business can be very lonely. So it's actually quite funny. You guys put me on stage in Vancouver back 2 years ago now. I was terrified to go on stage. I was terrified of public speaking. I had because I've been licensed for 15 years. I had such a rocky relationship to the industry in terms of relationships with other agents. It was very competitive where I was at, that I actually think I said on stage, like, you couldn't pay me to go and hang out with realtors for 2-3 days at a conference. Like, I was not about that, but it completely, we don't know what we don't know. Right. And just being open to other perspectives and opportunities has just been everything for my life, my family, my business. Right. So, and I think that I love how you and the rest of the C-suite puts relationship first, because that's what CEOs and founders are always telling us to do at the other brokerages. That's how you run a successful real estate business. Why aren't they doing that? Like, there's no relationship with them whatsoever, but they're telling us that's what we need to do to be successful. So I think it really needs to start with leadership, and you guys are doing such an excellent job at that. Glenn's great at it. Another thing I noticed that you guys have been doing is empowering the entire C-suite to start focusing on their personal brand. And I don't know if that's intentional, but it's what I've noticed.
I'm smiling because it's a lot of effort, and so it's nice when the effort gets recognized. Yes. Oh no, it's so in my stint in tech, I spent almost a decade in tech. My first big keynote was at NAREP in, it's like 2010, 12, I don't know, or over a decade ago. And it was like, to your point of like getting on stage, it was my first, like, I did an hour keynote to 1,000 people, and that was stressful. Now I jump up to 6,000 people unprepped. And it's just a muscle, right? You saw me do it international. I didn't have a script. It was like, I felt that's what you guys needed to hear. And so a lot of when I speak now, people say, oh, wow, you're like speaking to me. It's like, well, normally I'm like, you notice I'll sit in the front row the entire time. When you guys see me on my phone, I'm actually taking notes. And then normally when I speak, people are like, oh, you were speaking to me. It's like, well, I was trying to be as present in the moment, actually talk to you guys about whatever I feel as the message that needs to be delivered. But again, that's like 2 decades of practice, right? It's not like the first time I spoke to 1,000 people, it was slides and very, 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 very rehearsed. But in that presentation that I did, I had a picture of Tesla, Apple, Microsoft, and in the shape of oil pumps out in the ocean. And I said, data is the new oil. And that was in the, like, I had a slogan in there that I said, if the product is free, you are the product, right? And I talked about how, like, Gmail and all these products that 10, 15 years ago, we were just like getting to understand how they worked. Like, look, anything that's amazing and it works well and has no cost, they're data mining you, right? And it was a new concept, but I fundamentally believe that data is no longer relevant because of AI. And let me expand on that for a second, right? Where I think the world is shifting is that it's almost how the brain works and and it'll be interesting to see what cognitive abilities humans really expand on, right? Like once upon a time, school was memorization based. And then, we had the entire universe at our fingertips through search. But now we have contextual search, which is really what large language models are. So I don't need the richness of the data that we once created silos around as software companies. I don't think is going to be as important. And the shift has happened a while ago. So this is like my next proclamation won't be new, but the new oil is attention. And that's super long-winded to your comment, right? Like everyone is a one man, one woman media company. Yeah. And the one thing I've been super consistent about my journey is being non-emotional about facts, right? Like I don't actually like creating content. I don't like talking into a camera by myself. By the way, this is why I do a lot of podcasts, because this conversation to me feels very natural. Yeah. And my team will actually clip this and you'll see parts of this in my content in the next 90 days, right? Because this is a really good way of capturing my stream of consciousness in flow. Yeah. Versus like if it's like just stare at a camera and freestyle, it's like it doesn't come natural. And by the way, I'm starting to get better at it because I'm doing it a lot more. But we are like, the AI is your jam. So I'm preaching to the choir here. But like one of the interesting things that I don't think is being fully appreciated is how AI is being embedded into everything. And when it comes to social, which is what you brought up, it's fundamentally switching how content is being distributed. We are switching from the social, social media is actually almost an antiquated definition of what it's becoming. Yeah. Because now it's your interest graph. Before is your social graph, meaning, I have 10,000 followers. I see their content, they see my content. That's a social graph. We're switching to a interest graph, meaning if your content hits, like I can create a brand new social media profile. And if I create content that's good, it can go viral super easily now. And easily because it's the AI and the algorithms that are picking up on the nuances and re-pushing it out. And so the thesis right now, and it gets to shift, and where you're noticing it on the leadership, I said, just put out as much as you can. It's to me, it's quantity over everything. And and before people judge that, because quality is important, but the quality is the leadership I've put around me. So it's like, yes, with a good group of humans, it's just quantity, because for you to be in the seat that you're in, I've already qualified your quality. So it's like, if everyone just creates as much as they can with their authentic persona and opinion, we're going to get some really good quality as well. The one thing I've been really directionally accurate my entire career is seeing what is directionally accurate, right? Like, is there going to be more of this activity in 5 years or less? And if it's more, go do more of it. If it's less, do less of it. It becomes very simple. So yes, what you're seeing is a very concentrated, very well orchestrated thing that is just now kind of looking normal and natural, but it's because of focus and investment and time and energy.
Yeah. And even, people that I have relationships with, like Seth and Noor, and I know because I have relationships with them, the value that they have to share. And I am so pleased that you guys are pushing this, because there's only going to be benefits for everybody.
But it's obvious when you think about it. It's directionally accurate, right? Like creating content and leaning into AI is smart. It's good, not bad when you think of directional accuracy. So if we all obviously go duh, then why don't you do it? It's like how you said creating relationships is good, then do it. Don't talk about it. Yeah. And I think that most people avoid it
for the same reason that, surprise, I avoid it. Like, I'm sure everybody is sick of seeing my face on their feed. I pump out probably about 3 videos a day, 7 days a week, because it is, the volume. I do believe that. But what they
You
don't know is that I hate doing it. I
when
hate taking the
you
video.
opened up with saying you see me everywhere. That's part illusion. I don't physically go to many things.
Yeah.
You don't see me outside of EXPCon, right?
Yeah.
I don't go. Right, like I don't go to industry events. I may do one in a year, two if it's convenient with my family's travel, right?
Mhm.
But that is by design. Like I do actually want you guys to feel that you see me everywhere. But if you pause and go, wait, where have you physically seen me? Not too many places. Right. You see me at EXPCon International when I met your husband last year in Lisbon. You saw me at Canada, but have you seen me anywhere else physically? You haven't. I go to the 3 cons a year, and then like the mastermind retreats that I host around my calendar, and that's it. And outside of that, I spend a lot of time doing this. So I love the reaction when people, it's like, hey, I see you everywhere. I'm like, that's by design, right? But it still is, it fits into my goals with my family, right? Where I get to have my cup full because I get to spend time with Ariana and the kids and my parents and my siblings without sacrificing what's important, right? So I think it's important to understand what your goal is. And I actually spoke at one industry event I've done in a while. And they were comparing our business to franchisors. And I said, the franchise model is no longer relevant. Because once upon a time, if I wanted to buy a KW, I'd have to go to Austin, Denver to Remax, New Jersey to get one of the Anywhere brands, Realogy brands. I would get the model, take it back home, and then use influence to get people attracted to the brand. And then they normally get an attachment to the brand through an annual conference. I truly believe that 80-some thousand agents are in a one-to-one digital relationship with me. Right? Like
Yeah.
if you're either at EXP or even at a competitor brand, you have a relationship with my digital avatar. Right. And it's interesting when like I have that level of connection with even the ones that are not with us. Right. But that's because of the modern technology that exists with high speed internet and social media delivery, where I can now be off. And there's so much of us. Right. I think it's impossible to hide today. I don't think you can have a persona representative that's not who you are. Right. Like,
Yeah.
I do cuss. I am very authentic. Like you kind of know where I sit on most opinions, and especially in the industry, I'm not shy. And look, I don't have to be your jam, right? Like you don't have to like us. And not in an abrasive way, but like I'm being very authentic. And I think that resonates with the people who it resonates with, and it doesn't resonate with the people it doesn't resonate with.
Yeah. When I'm coaching agents on AI for social media specifically, and they're really worried about being authentic and actually putting an opinion out there, I say, listen, is it more important to align with the values of a few or with none of many? You know what I mean? Like your people are your people. And I know everybody says this, and it's just so true. So
100%.
AI, let's talk a little bit of AI. Where do you see AI in our real estate industry in the next 5 years? Do you feel, because I get asked the question all the time, is AI going to take the jobs? And I'm like, you don't even want to know my answer. It just depends on what I'm feeling like that day on that. Sometimes I go off the rails. But, what do you think about that? Do you think that AI is going to replace a lot of people and jobs in general? How about real estate specifically?
It's a great question, and it's much broader than real estate. I think there's like the philosophical implications for society in general.
Mm-hmm.
There's the couple things, like, and again, I don't know that anyone knows the answer either.
Yeah.
We will see. But what I do have is like past experiences, right? There's a couple of things that to me are very real. One is most people overestimate what can happen in a year and grossly underestimate what can happen in a decade, right? And so the best example I have of that is this little thing, right? We're on number 16, right?
It's hard to believe.
Let's go to number 1. Number 1 was a toy. It was an iPod that allowed you to make a couple phone calls. Today, it is the remote control to our life. Like this starts my Tesla. It is my credit card. It is how I board planes. It is my identification. It is completely tied to the laptop I'm talking to you on. The way it's an entire ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
And it's a category. That was the second big tech leap forward I lived through. The first one was high-speed internet, right? Like I went from having to go to an office and do dial-up stuff and leave voicemails to like now I can actually, it was high-speed internet that gave birth to mobile. And I think people don't kind of put that in the sequential order, right?
Mm-hmm.
We needed high-speed internet first, then we got mobile, right? That's how
Mm-hmm.
the BlackBerry movie is really good. I just recently watched it. Canadians.
Canada.
It was really interesting how they got the compression to the packets and all that stuff. So AI is one of those transformational ones, right? Like I've heard some people say it's fire. I'm not sure, but like it's up there, right? And one of the probably top 5 most powerful shifts we've seen in society. And I don't know if you were there for my closing statements at Inman at International EXPCon, which is what I was saying were like very pertinent, right? If we go to the printing press, like they literally said it was going to ruin the world and put people out of business, but it gave birth to this radical transformation in society of knowledge, right? Knowledge was really kept for the rich and the clergy. And then the printing press, because that's the only people who could afford handwritten books. Then the printing press gave birth to this proliferation of education and knowledge, because then everyone could learn how to read and become educated. It was like a substantial shift from a physical technology, a machine that could print, to what it actually did for society. Right. And the same could be said for, the plow and the wheel and the loom for clothes. If you actually read the excerpts from the description of the horse, you would think that we're talking about the car and like the pollution it created. The first car was hailed as an environmental miracle because there was horse manure all up and down the streets creating infections and stuff. And they're like, oh, So I think it's one of these moments. And by the way, my answer is as the eternal optimist, right? So, which is just in my nature. I wouldn't be who I am or sitting in the seat I sit in. But I do believe that there is a whole lot of monotony that exists in the world that is not designed for the positive human experience, right? Like there's actually pretty interesting data that happened post industrial revolution where happiness dropped quite a bit when people went into factories doing the same thing, monotonous thing over and over again, versus when, like if you take a carpenter who takes a piece of wood and ends up with a piece of furniture, there's actually a very satisfying happiness quotient that goes into creation and start to finish of the process is important. So there's going to be a lot of knowledge work that is now done by AI, right? But, I go back, then I compare it to what happened during COVID, which was, there was a couple month period. And again, I live in Miami, so we didn't participate in lockdowns, but in Canada, you guys did. And there was a moment in time where I was like, oh, we're never meeting again in person. And that was the furthest thing from the truth, right? As soon as we could legally do it in every one of our respective hometowns, we rushed back to being tribal as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're a social species. We like being in community and being together. So the couple things that I'm very clear about is technology is like water. It always finds a leveling and streamlining. So the interesting parts about this moment in time is, one, I don't think there's gatekeeping like there are with other technical advances, right? Where like you don't need to be a coder. You can just vibe code now, which to me is fascinating as a non-technical founder who's scaled tech companies. That's really, for a non-technical person, that's a super exciting moment. I don't think at scale people have comprehend what that's going to usher in. And to me, that's exciting. That's like the economic impact where anyone can, and Ariana, you should probably have her on. She's very involved in the startup tech scene and she advises tech companies. She was my co-founder in every business we had prior to me joining EXP. But she says at the speed that you can now come up with a concept, test, deploy, tweak, that used to take 6-12 months with capital versus like now you can do it in hours with no money, right? So I think it's going to usher in a ton of innovation. I'm very clear that we're about to commoditize all forms of digital communication. So posts, video, voice, it's only going to get better and better and better. And so everyone's going to be able to create beautiful content of themselves sounding really intelligent. And what that will happen, because again, I can predict this based on directional accuracy, is that we're just going to become numb to it, right? If like, think about how excited we used to get when we got voicemails, emails, text messages, right? Now it's just like, it's all noise in the background. I have time tomorrow where I have like 58 unread text messages and, email. Like I only check it like every 3 weeks when I have some time because I prioritize this over that, right? Like to me, every single day I have X amount of hours I'm going to deploy to impact the business. I pick one day in the future when I can get to that. So I do believe that AI is actually going to have an interesting net outcome of a premium on human interaction. So as much as we're like, hey, AI is going to eat the world, at the same time, it's like, I think we're going to start valuing in-person interactions or conversations or sales funnels or experiences at even a higher premium than before. Because as we become more numb to all the perfectly manicured, edited communications, like I think lives are going to have a premium. Going live events. I was at a super interesting event a couple months ago where it was executive officers of like the biggest companies in the world, like direct to consumer companies, and some of the biggest funds in the world that invest in all kinds of stuff. And it was fascinating because the biggest capital allocators were buying sports teams, like soccer teams, WNBA teams, football teams.
The live aspect, right?
And they were like, we're betting 10 years out. And interestingly enough, they were all really bullish on women's sports, WNBA, women's FIFA. And then I heard from like Unilever and Dove and like the biggest direct to consumer marketing brands in the world. And they're all spending their dollars on live events. Right. So think about it. The biggest capital allocators in the world are buying the teams, and the biggest direct to consumers are buying the eyeballs, because no one's going to show up to watch two AIs play soccer. Right. It's that human experience that we're going to crave and put at a premium. So one thing I think I do pretty well is look at just behavior and go, okay, how does this affect my world? And in my world, to me, that translates into who's going to create the best human experience by leveraging, like, the thing that people just need to get over. It's like, look, it's here and you need to do it because your competitor's going to do it. Whether that means streamlining processes or things that you spend time on, right? Like if you can get an hour back a day on some manual process that you can now replace with, an AI or a protocol of AIs through a system, then you have to. Like, it's not up for debate. But by the way, as insane as this whole conversation could sound, like a real conversation I had in like 2004 with an agent in my office was when I was principal broker, is I told her she needed to get email and stop faxing contracts and use DocuSign. And she was, a sweet 70-some-year-old agent. And she goes, I think this internet thing's a fad, Leo. Like, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to keep my landline. I'm going to keep my fax machine. And again, she was in a unique position because she was almost out of the business.
Yeah.
But as insane as that sounds, like, I haven't talked to anybody who's like, AI is a fad. No, like, everybody agrees with it. It's how you use it, how you leverage it. And I'm also aware that, like, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 5 years, I see a fully non-human supported brokerage.
Right.
Like, but that's okay, because that doesn't mean that we have to. Like, I actually think part of our value proposition is to be as leveraged as possible through the best systems. But like, a huge part of our value proposition is that human part about it, right? That's why even though we're remote and virtual, I think one of the most powerful things we have is our in-person events, whether it's the big events or the rallies or the self-organized local masterminds, right? It's the community. I think the biggest misnomer we have is that we're virtual, right? I think so much of the value is the in-person that we create through our communities.
Well, you guys have found the perfect balance, to be honest. Like, whenever I hear Glenn on stage in Toronto, I think it was in Toronto in November, and he was on stage and he talked so much about AI and automation, but still, being present for his agents, and you guys having relationships with your agents. It has to be the perfect storm, right? It has to be the perfect mix. And honestly, like, I never feel as aligned as I do as when I hear you guys speak about it. I'm like, I am in the right place, because I am super passionate about it. I feel like this is such an exciting time. AI is a freaking renaissance. It is not an industrial revolution happening again. It is a freaking renaissance. And the possibilities and the inventions and the art and just everything, it's just going to be wild and enable us to do whatever we want with our lives and live very long lives. We want to write poetry in a meadow. That's what we're going to do. You know what I mean? This is going to be freedom. I'm looking at AI as freedom. But I'm an optimist as well, right?
And so I'll take you back to a moment. I remember I had an argument with my college roommate when I was 22, and I'd just come back from probably a Tony Robbins event. And I was really excited, and wouldn't stop talking. And he actually told me, he's like, he got upset with me, and he was like, you're so full of shit. And he's like, everything you just said is made up. And I paused and I thought about it in a second. I said, you're absolutely right. But so is everything you. And so I choose to live in my delusion versus your delusion. That's very, pessimistic. Even in a world where there's so much chaos and problems, I think it's still a choice that we make as to the version of reality we want to participate in. And I'm optimistic that this, I mean, look, any shift makes uncertainty, but at the same time, I'm doubly down and excited about the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely at the right brokerage. And Leo, I know you are limited on time. I want to ask you one quick question before we sign off. The AI tool that you cannot live without.
Yeah. And the interesting part, I think, is for most people, and I read it and listen to everything that I can, it's almost generational, right? So I think the one that everyone should not live without is LLM, right? Because it's that
Yeah.
contextual conversations that we have, but a little self-serving because we invested and we deployed in it. But like Fixer has been really cool, right? Like it's brought joy back to me in email in this, and I implemented it on my personal email, right? Because in my corporate email, my amazing support team has access to my email and they check it for me because there's so many things of like, I don't check my email. I'd stopped checking my email a long time ago. And there's things that like legal notices and wire approvals, and there's stuff that I need to keep an eye on. So I have a human support that can check that. But in my personal, I implemented Fixer, and it's my personal vanity email address, my name at my name. But that's like where, tax bill notices go to, and, bills for rental properties. And with the allotted time I have to do everything in a day, it's been a game changer where it's like, if I got 50 to 100 emails a day, now it's like, here are the 2 that you need to read. And here are the suggested responses. And I even got super interesting anecdote for you. It was like my dad sent me this long email in Spanish, and I probably would have looked at it and said, I'm going to call him later, and it might have slipped my mind or might not. And it wrote like 3 really good paragraphs. So in Spanish, I was like, yeah, let's do that. I like that. So I look at this technology like every other technology, which accelerates time and compresses it and allows me to do more with less and prioritize what's important.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you, Leo, so much for your time today, for your time for me, for your time for our audience, which are mostly EXP agents. So we appreciate you, and thank you for being a consistent leader that shows up 100%.
I appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.